97?
97.
Okay. In the 23 years, 24 years since you left an executive role, obviously the Article 2 branch has grown in power, and Article 1 seems to be shriveling in lots of ways. Do you have a theory of why Articles 2 and 3 are gaining more power in American life and Article 1 seemingly is weaker?
Well, that is, I would say, a cosmic question of our civic life. I don't really have an answer to that. Obviously, each branch has enormous powers authorized by the Constitution, and it may be, if this is the case, that the Congress has just not asserted itself as it should with respect to protecting its authorities. I don't have, to be honest, not enough of a political scientist to know exactly how this balance has changed. I'm sure from the point of view of the Congress, its role has diminished, but sometimes I'm sure the other branches feel the same way.
Right. Well, I think it's a mix of overreach by Article 2 and underreach by Article 1. So I'm not asking the question in a way to put you on the defensive as if everything that's wrong is chiefly outside the Congress, because I think we're probably chiefly to blame. But you're going to become the most powerful law enforcement officer in the nation, and obviously you'll have lots of prosecutorial discretion. But could you help us understand what the line is between prosecutorial discretion, which is understandable in any complex organization, and executive unilateralism, which I hope we can agree, at least at the definitional level, is a massive constitutional problem? What's the line?
Yeah. So it's not the most easy line to outline. The Supreme Court's Cheney case is the best overall description. For the entire history of the country, prosecutors and government agencies have had discretion to make decisions about how they allocate their resources in terms of enforcement priorities, both criminal and civil. This has either generally been non-reviewable or deferentially reviewable in the courts. The opposite side of the line is that the executive branch can't simply decide we're not going to enforce this law at all. Now, where a particular piece of conduct falls between those two is a difficult thing to say, except in an individual case.
Well, I mean, obviously, in our tribal politics, it's easy for each party when they're out of power to say that the Article 2 branch is overreaching. But when you're in power, it turns out those mostly look like discretion. How do you think, not just the Supreme Court line of cases, but at the level of you being the boss of the AAG for OLC, for instance, how will you determine what actions are beyond the pale?
Well, I do think that when the department makes determinations based on resources, on its views about which are the most important matters that it should go forward with, when it thinks that state and local governments are in a better position to handle those matters, any of those kind of factors are all perfectly appropriate for deciding to exercise prosecutorial discretion. But mere disagreement with a law passed by Congress or a decision that the department will simply not enforce regardless of resources or other things would be impermissible. But again, I think no matter how hard I try, I can't put this in the perfect words, and I'm sure maybe we'll disagree in the future if I do get this position, but it will be out of a good faith effort on my part to be sure that the executive is only doing what it's supposed to do.
I want to move on to another topic, but one more finer point on it. Is congressional inaction a legitimate basis for Article 2 to decide it just must act because it wishes policy were different and legislation doesn't move, therefore you have a pen and a phone? Can you just act because Congress didn't?
Also, you're asking really tough questions of our basic constitutional structure. Doing so simply out of upset that Congress hasn't done what you want, obviously not okay. But in the formulation that Justice Jackson, who I quoted in my opening, famously gave in the Youngstown Steel case, the president does have authorities when he acts consonant with Congress. He's at his highest power. When Congress has not acted at all, he's left with only his own power, which is clearly available under the Constitution, depending on the circumstance that we're talking about. And when he acts in contravention of Congress, he has only the authorities the Constitution gives him, minus the authorities that the Congress has. And this is what Jackson famously referred to as the lowest ebb of the executive's authority. So the inaction is in the middle. You can't do this just because Congress didn't act, but you can, the president can act if it's within his authority and he believes it's something in the public interest.
Thanks. I want to switch gears a little bit. I was encouraged earlier when you said that the department's purposes are to make sure, include among them, to be sure that both the powerful and the powerless are treated equally. I want to talk about one case where that obviously hasn't happened, and that's the case of Jeffrey Epstein and his many, many victims of domestic and international sex trafficking. Obviously, he evaded justice for years, and when the department did ultimately partner with local authorities, it allowed charges to be brought that didn't befit the seriousness of his crimes. Infuriatingly, he was allowed to die by apparent suicide in federal custody, despite the fact that everybody knew he was a suicide risk and many people would benefit from that outcome. And then most recently, his state has failed to pony up to make right on all of their obligations to compensate his victims. What do you think went wrong with the department's handling of the Epstein case?
Senator, so my position as a judge, and also my previous position as a prosecutor, I'm always been extremely careful not to comment about something without knowing the facts. The facts I know about the Epstein matter are the ones I've read in the media and that I've seen on television. So I don't think, I'm just not in a position.
We can agree that those are disgustingly embarrassing about how weak the department's pursuit of this evil man was.
Absolutely. But you asked me the why question, and I can't answer the why question. But on the values question, I can answer. This is just horrendous. And he obviously should have been vigorously prosecuted substantially earlier, but I don't know the why.
And he has co-conspirators who are still being held and pursued. And as you and I discussed in private, I hope that we will make sure that the department prioritizes resources for this. Scores and scores of the women he victimized are just in their 30s now, but they've had so much of their lives stolen from them. And obviously, sex trafficking is a scourge of our time. And I really would hope that the department continues to do an after-action review on why we've underinvested there. I've got more questions on the department's China initiative, but my time has expired, so I'll follow up with that separately.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Senator Blumenthal.